All right. There goes the music. Good afternoon. Whoop. Well, for some reason it decided it wanted to start again. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
So I've got a little bit of a delay. Anyway, so today I have Sophia with us. I'm trying to figure out why. I know why. Hang on. I've got one of my things is still running. There it is. All right. I got it figured out. Never mind. Anyhow, I have Sophia here with us today. Sophia, I am not going to butcher your screen name if you'll let everybody know so people know who you are.
Yeah, German is kind of a difficult language.
Yeah. You may know her as, go ahead and tell me.
Machtmirdochegal.
And you see her in the chat quite a bit. And she, I met over on Denver Steve-O's channel, I believe.
Yeah, I think one of the sleeping ones got us talking.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, one of the sleeping with Steve-O. So we were both sleeping with Steve-O and started talking over the top of him. I hope he got good sleep that night. We were visiting for quite a while. But anyway, so she has graciously agreed to come and visit with us about the German culture and the foods that it produced. Now, she does live in Germany currently. I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself. Sophia, you have the floor. Go ahead. Let us know what about yourself and your background.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a very boring German with sort of regional difference with a family that came together in a little town called Münster, where my parents met and most of my family at this point. So my dad's from Westphalia, my mom's from Hesse in northern Germany, and they got a Swabian part of the family. So that brings a lot of recipes together too, nicely enough. And since I got into cooking very early, due to my parents, they sort of had this approach: if we got interested, they let us do it. And so we cut with a not sharp knife the stuff that got into the stew. And that's how we started cooking and got interested and learned how to do fish and so on very early. And since I was the one that really got interested in cooking, I used to do a lot of the family meals for the big stuff. And that's how essentially all family recipes ended with me.
Awesome. That is so cool. So what the area that you currently live in, what is the topography like? What's is it flat? Is it mountainous?
It's really flat. It's the very north of Germany. We have about 23 kilometers to the border to the Netherlands, actually. So, and one region to the North Sea. So essentially flat, flatter, and flat. There's this joke.
A lot of farming?
Yeah, really a lot of farming. There's this joke you can see on Monday who arrives Friday. And we have a lot of farming and grazing by the sea too.
Okay.
So the dams are guarded by sheep, and they get the really good nutritious stuff, and the cows and everything. So, and since it's really flat, you got a lot of soil to work with.
Right.
And
so lots of fresh vegetables and that type of stuff.
Yeah. And you got a lot of place for the animals, in contrast to the mountainous areas where they constantly have to move. So you got big farms and a lot of space, and you got a lot of vegetables, particularly kales and cabbages and so on.
Yeah. So
And in
you
this
you
region, you
have
also have
go ahead, sorry.
rhubarb a lot.
Rhubarb. Oh, okay, cool. So on you're talking about the meats and that type of stuff, is it mostly a beef or is it more sheep that or lamb that you guys use in your meals?
It's essentially all of it. Sheep
Oh,
is a bit more not as common as you'd think in this region,
okay.
but it's still there.
Mhm.
So, because with sheep, they're not exactly bred to be eaten, they're more
Right.
bred
Okay.
to guard the dams. So, you take the natural lifespan of the animal and then they end up on the table.
Ah, gotcha. So they're mostly for like the wool and then keeping the dams in check,
Yep.
basically. Yeah.
With beef
And
and
then go ahead.
pig, you got a lot more. You got one region in this state is very known for poultry, which
Okay.
also means you don't want to drive through there with open windows and the AC if they dung the ground.
Yeah.
it's it's universally the worst kind of dung agreed upon.
Oh,
We
yeah.
used to live in that area and it's nasty.
Oh, I imagine. I imagine. Um, so and the types of vegetables are mostly cabbages, kales, or is it and potatoes, I guess. Um, what kind of things do you find there?
Yeah, I mean, you got the classic kale, which is its own season here,
Hmm.
with varying recipes and spicinesses. That's the
Right.
thing too. The region above us, Eastern Frisia, is very much about eating it pure with
Yeah.
and drowsing it with liquor to get it out.
Well, I believe that liquor is always better. If you can add liquor to it, it's going to make it better no matter what.
No,
But that's
eating,
me.
drinking it afterwards. So you make an activity of it. So they eat it, play a
Hmm.
they play a game, and they drink a lot.
Hmm.
While
Gotcha.
the other regions put cumin in there, like
Hmm.
it makes sense to me, and
Wow.
or they take an oat thing in there
Hmm.
that also helps it along. But
Hmm.
that's sort of the biggest difference on the kale season here.
Right.
What are you allowed to put in there?
Right. So, I mean, I know that the Italians have a meal called cacciatore, which means hunter's stew. And basically, it's a base stew that the whole idea of the hunter's stew is that whatever the hunter brought home that night, it went into the pot. And I would assume that maybe there's something along those same lines in the German culture, is there?
Yeah, of course. We have a lot of hunters here too. So
Mhm.
and we used to have our own. We used to hunt ourselves. So we'd have the animals, and the animals would get prepped and everything, and then you have
Mhm.
like boar stew and everything else. So
It's like
I used
venison and
to
all of that,
like in Germany, you have a highly regulated hunting schedule.
right?
If you got the time where the little ones show up,
Mhm.
you're not allowed to hunt. So,
Right.
depending on the schedule of the animal, it gets hunted. Or if you have like a lot of boar that shows up, so you need to
Mhm.
regulate the amount. So the boar illness, I think pestis is it's called, doesn't show
Okay.
up and gets around since boar are
Mhm.
the bigger animals here, so they can breed very uncontrollably, and then you have a big hunt on them.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of the same way here in the States. We have certain seasons for certain things. And then they're also divided into gun season versus bow season. But once the once like the deer have their fawns and that type of stuff, they are no longer, you can't hunt them. So very much like it is here. But that's, I don't know about here in Texas. That I can tell you is that we have a very difficult problem with pigs, with the wild pigs. And so I don't know that there is a season for those. I think they're probably pretty open because they're just overrunning. So, so I'm assuming that you'll have
a bit like that in Germany, but you need an official permission to go on a collective hunt on them.
Okay.
And they are protected during the fawn, during the baby time too. So, but you generally always have in most farm shops that have an own hunting ground some form of boar meat. Like there's a boar liver sausage in my favorite one actually, and they make sausages like salami sausages that smell amazing. I haven't tried them because they're not my consistency.
They're too hard, maybe? Are they a hard sausage?
Biting into hard fat.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I have one kind of salami I like, and it's got a really soft fat. So that's how I eat it. But the other ones are either cooked, so the fat dissolves, or so on.
But I think, a lot of cuisine in different areas or in different parts of the world, I think is really kind of based on what is available in those areas, especially as we go back in time when we're talking about where it wasn't so easy to throw stuff on an airplane and haul it in, or put it on a truck and haul it in. So in the area that you're in now, what kind of foods were those types of foods that were based on what they had locally versus what they could bring in?
Yeah, the great thing about that area is it's essentially swampland. Some of it is dried up, but it's a very fertile soil. So, and it's close to the coast, so they got the trade goods.
Right.
Like there's a really special tea blend of a black tea that's based on the trades. They got the good teas from the international trades, and they made it into this really amazing blend of tea. And that's how a lot of it got in. So we had a lot of.
Are they growing it now? Are they growing it now, or are they still getting it from like China and all of that?
I think they're still getting it from somewhere else, but it's a huge industry here, and it's a culture. Like there's an actual museum around it.
Oh, nice. And then what about, say, your okay, what I've read, Sophia, is that the main meal of the day is like lunch to us. It's the middle of the day. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's traditionally it's lunch because school ended before lunch, and you had a lunch hour for the workers. So and since you had a single income household for a long time, the men and the children would come home for lunch, and the mother and the wife would do the whole prepping and housewife thing. So you had like big meals at lunch, you had a somewhat medium meal for breakfast, and you had like slices of bread with sausage and so on for dinner.
Oh, okay. So you were saying that you had what kind of things did that are breakfast in Germany? What kind of things do they have for this medium meal in the morning when they get up?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how much energy you need, but it's
Right.
generally very carb and protein based.
Okay.
Like with the farmers, the farmer
Mhm.
breakfast I told you about, it's
Mhm.
potatoes, eggs, and bacon
Okay.
because they needed a lot of energy and had to work for
During the
most
day.
of the day on meal. So
Mhm.
they kind of got it all in one.
Right.
And more traditionally, with the lower calorie version, it's bread and butter and sausage, cheese, and
Oh,
maybe a
okay.
bit of a smaller egg, not the whole giant pan. On my grandma's horse farm, they had a stove where you could take single parts out for
Right.
the sizes of the pans, and
Mhm.
you had like this giant pan where they took all of it out and had
Oh,
the
wow.
entire pan above the fire.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's
So
a bit.
she was still working over fire, not over a stove like we
Yeah,
see
my
today.
grandma was born in 1921, so
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah.
got pretty old too.
So she was literally working over a fire just like they did back in the, like we would say in the 1800s in that area. It wasn't a true, I mean, was it a stove or was it a fireplace?
it wasn't a fireplace; it was a fire-powered stove, and
Okay. Okay.
I think you took wood or coal in there, and
Mhm.
you had different sizes, and you could close it entirely for pots, but
Right.
with the
Right.
pans, you really had you literally had it
All kinds
right
of
above
stuff.
the fire.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Um, got some great, smoky flavor with that, it sounds to me.
Yeah, they
So
had
go ahead.
they had animals too, so you'd have
Mm.
like a pig hanging around for a while, and then they'd cut it up and
Oh,
throw it
wow.
in there.
There you go, right in there. So so that was breakfast,
Yeah,
and then they would go out to school or go to work or into the fields, and then would come home for lunch, you said, was it a late lunch,
yeah,
like,
there was. Oh,
it wasn't like
it
noon?
usually was 12 a.m. on the dot,
Oh, oh, wow. Because I would
which
okay,
is
cool.
it's really
Yeah, that's
interesting
cool.
because we had a big difference with the when we had to adjust my grandfather to another schedule since my grandmother had passed, and we had
Mhm.
to get him to 2 p.m. for lunch.
Oh, wow. Oh,
It
wow.
was a
That
pain in the ass.
I imagine, old folks can be pretty set in their ways. So the big meal being lunch, what kind of things were we having at lunch, at your
Yeah,
house?
it's pretty much a lot of veggies,
Mhm.
potatoes, and with the later years, you have more regular meat, but for a long time, you pretty much had meat on Sunday. Big
Oh, okay,
roast.
so you were okay, so it was, not much meat during the week, and then you had a big meat meal, or was it leftovers throughout the week, and then you did another big meat meal on
You
Sunday?
sometimes had the leftovers if you took a big roast for
Mhm,
convenience reasons, and you
mhm,
really had like mainly meat on Sunday and like the smaller versions of it during the week. But
right,
since many people didn't have that much money for the daily meal, they
mhm,
really stretched it out and they used the vegetable scraps to make soup. Like they
Gotcha.
collect the vegetable scraps and make a soup with it and everything. And with the
Cool.
convenience food, it kind of broke down a little because you didn't need to make all of it yourself, but it's come back to make all of it yourself. I'm literally having a chicken soup based on the rotisserie chicken I got for lunch.
Yes, Juliana. Hello, Juliana. This is Sophia, as in Mach. She is here, and we're visiting a bit about her culture and the foods that it produced. So, you said that there's a lot of stews. Now, are those vegetable-based stews, or are we using like the bones? Because obviously, if you have not a lot of money, you're going to make the best use out of everything. So therefore, you're probably using a lot of the
a lot of
bones.
vegetable stews. It's depending on the season, with the imports being easier and like row houses, you have more varieties, but it used to be what was the season, and you've had asparagus season, you've had kale season, you've had like cabbage season, and you would pretty much get the whole cabbage and process it.
Okay. So when you're talking about the meat, though, my thought is that you would take the bones and so forth and boil them down and create a broth, and that would hold you through the week in the protein department while you put vegetables in it. Am I right on that?
Yeah, it's you do have vegetable-based broth, which is mainly used by vegetarians, I think, at this point. And since it's become more convenient, others use it too, but a lot of the times you just took the broth, you just took the bone, you took the vegetable scraps you got, and you put them in a giant pot and boiled it.
And did that particular pot of the vegetables and so forth, did that last you through the week, or a couple of days, or is it just one meal?
Yeah, it was for the week usually, and sometimes you would put it in the cellar in between because it's cold. And with fridges available, it ended up in the fridge a lot. But with those broth, you can pretty much have them on the stove for 3 days in the fall. So, or 4 days without them going bad. So you just heat it up again and heat it up again. And with stews, the amazing thing is you can heat it up again and it gets better. The longer it boils, the better it gets.
Oh yeah, I always say, like the chicken tortilla soup that I did on the channel the other day. It's always better the second day, and even better the third. It's same basic idea. It's all those seasonings marry, and they get better. So I totally understand that. So would they had this vegetable stew that they would use as a base, I'm assuming, and then would they add meats to that, or would they just go with the same thing for the 3 or 4 days?
It depends. If you had meat available, you'd put it in there, and a lot of the time it was like bacon, or in some version for the meat taste, and you'd get some essentially roast in some version and put it in there, or you just went with a fresh meat if you could get it.
If you could get it, yeah. So throughout the week, so Sunday apparently was the big week meal. You would have a big meal on a Sunday, and then you would either use the leftovers from that to go through the next week, or use the scraps to create your stew. Am I following that correctly?
Yeah, it's very much use what you have, and if you had a rest of something, you make the next meal with it.
Cool.
So my grandma actually made her own cream cheese and everything, out of the
Mhm.
milk they got
Oh, wow,
because
okay.
they had to. And it was
Yeah,
this
well
that she told me, it's the one luxury I'm allowing myself. I'm not
mhm,
making my own cream cheese, curd
right.
cheese, butter anymore.
Mhm.
I'm buying
Oh,
it.
yeah,
We are there now.
I would
I'm buying it.
That's fine. So, you told me you were kind of out in the country. Is it in the country, is it more like that where you make your own butters, your own cream cheeses, your own curds, all of that stuff? Or is that, throughout wide? Is it yeah, obviously if you live in Munich or Berlin, you're not gonna be having milk. I mean, you have it delivered or you go get milk out of the grocery store. It's not like you have a cow in your backyard. But out in the country, um, is it still that way where people make their own butters and cheeses and that type of stuff?
Some do, some don't. And
Hmm.
you have a lot of farm shops around that have an interest in people buying their stuff. So it's
Hmm.
not horribly expensive.
Hmm.
And
Excellent.
that's sort of the thing that, and you got grocery stores too by now. When I
Yeah.
was little, we used to drive a lot into the Netherlands for some stuff
Hmm.
because we had like a small discounter and that was it.
Mhm. Yeah, I can I asked that because I can recall, there was times when I lived way out in the country, and it would take us 2 hours to go to a grocery store, just to get there, and so we kept a vegetable garden. Now, we didn't have any animals, and I wouldn't know how to slaughter one in the first place, um but we did do a lot of vegetable gardening, and so I was kinda wondering, I mean, maybe not you, but the general populace, do
My
they still
grandmother
do?
still did, and my grandmother.
Right,
With
right.
my father's side, my
Mhm,
grandfather's mother, she
mhm,
she had a little garden parcel in the next village because
mhm,
they didn't really have money. So
mhm,
he took all of the 6 kids to the next village. They took care of the garden and brought home
mhm.
the vegetables.
Awesome. And so, again, dinner the late night meal was something very light, bread, sausage, that type of stuff is what you were saying, correct?
Yep,
Something really light.
it's
What about
usually more sweet if you get some special bigger meal in the evening. And a lot of
mhm,
people still like to have their really good bread because that's a German thing. We have, I think,
mhm.
over 4,000 registered sorts of bread,
Wow, that's a lot of
and
bread.
that's not counting the rolls we have.
Oh,
So
wow. Well,
you have really
I did know that the
nutritious
pretzels
bread.
kinda came from there, yeah. So,
And our
this
current favorite is a soda bread, like a
mhm,
pretzel bread they have
okay,
at the bakery where we usually get our stuff. And
mhm,
it's really amazing. It's like a white bread that's a pretzel bread,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it's it's good. And you can
cool.
with German breads, it's really very much you can just put butter or cream cheese on there, and it still has an amazing taste.
Sounds like it. What about sweets, desserts, cakes, that type of stuff? Do you do that
Oh,
much, or is
it's a
it just
German
every
thing.
once in a while?
Yeah, it's there's this German concept called Kaffee and Kuchen, which
Mhm.
is coffee and cake,
Mm,
and it's a tradition. And
okay.
let's just say I like to eat cheesecake a lot.
Ah,
It's
so is it cheesecake mostly, or is it, others? Because I
it
was reading
depends
something
on the
about it
region
looked like an
and the season.
yeah,
A lot of it
because I
is
was looking at stuff that said apple strudels and stuff like that, and I'm thinking, "Wow, that sounds good."
oh, apple strudel is good, but it's not very much a general German thing. Apple
Okay.
strudel is sort of a Bavarian and Austrian thing.
Ah, okay. So that's a different area.
And if you're ever in Austria, in Innsbruck, I will tell you where to get good one.
If I ever get there, I will definitely look you up on that because that sounds really. My husband likes. I'm not a
I
big
used to
fan of
live
cooked
in
apples.
Innsbruck, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy I walked a lot in that time because that meant I could eat a lot more.
That's funny. Well, and you were younger too, so your metabolism was probably much
Oh,
better.
my metabolism really isn't the issue, unfortunately.
Uh,
The one upside of my metabolism being fast is I can eat a lot. The downside is I
mhm.
have to eat a lot to not lose
Yeah.
weight. It's slowed
Yeah.
down just a little at this point,
Mm,
but yeah, we lose weight way too easily. So
yeah.
it's fun and
It's
not
it's
fun.
uh,
But
yeah, I
continue.
hear you.
If you're in
You know,
Austria and you've got Sachertorte, like
uh,
this chocolate cake, and all of these nice cakes around, why would you not eat it?
oh, no kidding. No kidding. Hello, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, and
Um,
I mean the thing is with German cuisine, it's got dessert,
mhm,
it's got sweets, of course, but the difference is it's not as sweet as it would be in America. It's more of
mhm.
a savory sweet.
Yeah.
You like have plums on a cake.
Mhm. So Joe is obviously saying hello to you.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am,
Ah,
Joe. That's exactly who this is.
she
And
can
then
actually
there,
pronounce my name.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, Joe's a great girl.
Yeah,
She's
it's
she's a she does some amazing stuff. Um,
sweets are a lot more savory, so it's it's a lot of cream usually in there, or butter or so, or but it's not as much sugar as you have in American recipes. It's
right.
really, I like sweet stuff, but every time I get an American recipe, I'm like, what?
Wow. A lot of sugar. Yes. I can imagine. We use a lot
And
of sugar. And that's part of the problem here in America is we do, and it's processed sugar. It's not like natural sugars either.
I have
So,
the sugar in my grandma's sweet recipes. So
mhm.
when I saw the American ones, I was like, how do you not get diabetes a week in eating that?
Yeah. Well, a lot of us have it.
Yeah,
So, Juliana says, "Nice to meet you, Sophia."
yeah. Nice to meet you too.
And Michelle has a comment. My great grandmother used an old fashioned stove and they would put dried out sheep dung in the fire to keep it hot.
Yeah, you used what you had.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an art that's lost in a lot of cultures, but a lot of cultures still have it. Like
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the
my
day, in the
grandmother
pioneer days.
told the story about during the wartime, and they had an
Hmm.
unexpected twin birth. So
Hmm.
they had to use one of the calves because otherwise they would get lowered food rations, and they already had issues with the amount of food they got. So
Right.
they stayed up all night and turned this calf into blood sausage, liver sausage. They used everything of this calf. They butchered it
Hmm.
and prepped it, and it was they had to use what they had.
Hmm. Yeah. I know that back in the old days here in the States, they used buffalo dung and cow dung a lot of times for fires. They don't do that much anymore. It's mostly if they have gas, we use a natural gas or coal. Some people use coal fires, but it's kind of a lost art to cook over an open fire and actually do full meals over an open. I mean, we will grill stuff all the time, but we don't just cook over open fires, and so it's a really lost art. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure that the younger generation in Germany has less of the skills than say your generation or the generation before you, and that's we're seeing that in the States too.
but not as badly, actually. A lot of the food traditions stayed alive. Like, you still have the grill above the flames. It's sort of a birthday tradition
We don't
too.
have that.
We had
Mhm.
we had a giant earth hole dug out where the fire was in, and we had like a roast above it, and we'd have like the potatoes right in there in the fire and put the meat on the roast, and it turned and it got really nice, and it's really the
So
thing.
like a rotisserie or
Yeah,
spit.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it's sort of the thing you did. And with the
Mhm.
Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, we have a version here too. You have this tradition called Stockbrot, which essentially means you wrap a bread dough around
A
a
stick.
stick, and you hold it into the fire. So
Yeah, we did that
a lot
too.
of it stayed alive. Not with everyone, but on the countryside, it definitely did.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah, we did
really
it
has a
too.
resurgence today because we have a recession too, and people just find out, hey, why am I throwing away all of this flavorful food I could use to make my own food?
Right. Stews and that type of stuff. Oh yeah. They talk about the interesting thing about you've heard of a thing called a demi-glace, and basically a demi-glace was the French. What they would do is they would save their scraps for the entire week, and then they would make this beautiful sauce. But it took like 4 days to make. But it was all their scraps. It was like the ends of the onions and the ends of the celery and the potato peels and all that stuff. So I'm sure there's a German version of the same thing. Although it
Yeah,
sounds like
I
they do
dyed
more
my
stews.
dragon with carrot scraps. I
Mhm.
got these purple carrots at my farm store, and
Okay.
I got these really purple fingers from it, and we kind of didn't find the color he likes, the little stuffed dragon. So I kind of was like, hey, let's take one of those tea bags you
Mhm.
can fill yourself, put in the scraps, and figure out if the color sticks. Because that's how people used to make colors anyway.
Right. Right. So
Vegetable
you made a
rest.
out of it. Yeah.
So he's happily purple, and
I love it.
why not? And you can use it to
Mhm.
make syrups, because if we have rhubarb season, we don't
Mhm.
exactly put the good part of the rhubarb in the syrup. We
Right.
take the skin and we cook it up.
Mhm.
And we have all of these, and then you get the syrup, you put sugar in there. We have special sugars for syrup and for
Mhm.
jams. And
Mhm.
that's sort of the thing people do here too a lot. They make
Right.
jams in summer
Mhm.
to preserve the fresh produce.
Awesome. So when you talk about now, for one thing, we all know German's famous for their beer. And they
Yes.
have Germany's famous for their beer. And so was that served with most like maybe your main meal of the day, or was it sort of something that you did after work?
It's depends. It's more of a work after work thing in a way. But there's also
Mhm.
this tradition called Frühschoppen.
Okay.
It essentially means you drink a lot in the morning.
Oh, wow.
For
Okay.
cultural reasons, Germany has a lot of ways to drink in the morning for cultural reasons. One of um, one of them is a tradition I kind of grew up with too. It's called Schützenfest. It's sort of a you shoot at a wooden eagle usually, or a
Uh-huh.
clay pigeon, and the one that gets the final shot is the king for a year.
Oh, wow.
And you start drinking at 10.
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
it's a whole cultural holiday. It's a season. You have a town shooting. You have a regional shooting, you have a national shooting.
So is this sort of leading up to hunting season?
It's not really related to it. It's its own club.
Okay.
But a lot of people in there also hunt, usually.
Yeah, because usually I would usually think that something where you're doing a lot of shooting would be sort of the precursor to the beginning of hunting season.
Oh no, Germany has a huge shooting culture too.
Okay.
It's just more regulated.
Gotcha. And then, of course, we celebrate here in the States.
It's actually usually you have a fixated rifle.
Uh-huh.
So the under 18-year-olds can shoot too, and nothing happens.
So here in the States, we celebrate Oktoberfest, which sort of comes from the German immigrants that came to the States. And we have a big area here in Texas, in the Fredericksburg and New Braunfels area, that really does a lot of that. Yeah, a lot of Germans there. And so is it the same type of thing? Is it a month-long thing in Germany, or is it just...
No, this one actually is 3 or 4 days, depending on the village. And you have the town one, but most people don't participate in the town one unless they're active shooters in that situation or in the club itself. Most people just go there to meet their neighbors, have a good time, and
social thing, yeah.
Sometimes wake up in the straw, in the hay.
With whom?
Yeah, it's sort of with the German drinking age being 16 for unsupervised drinking and 14 for supervised drinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So Joe,
it's strange to others.
Yeah, Joe has been, I think speaking in German, and I don't know if she's asking a question or can you see the chat?
She's complimenting my earrings.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Joe, I don't understand German at all. I have no German, so I wasn't sure what you were asking or saying. So I thought Sophia could probably catch it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, 2 of them are pretty new, are the original ones, and most of the other ones are bought at the shop where I got the ones that... Here's the newest ones.
Oh, wow.
I don't have 2 same earrings because why be boring?
Yeah, exactly. You're a fashion statement, Sophia. We know that. Anyway,
this one is new.
Awesome. Michelle talking about the stove that I guess your grandmother had was, my mom swears that nothing tasted the same after her grandmother got a modern stove. I don't think it would.
Yes, something's missing that was there the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think the difference in the breakdown of the tradition in the US and Germany is that with Germany you had the one partner stays home culture longer. So the tradition was preserved. While in the US you had people working, it became more convenient, they had more technology, and it's more of a thing where it survived on the farms.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right, because I think in the Midwest, where there's more of the farming culture here in the States, that there is more of the single breadwinner family, whereas in the more urban areas here in the States, it's definitely, you have to have a dual income. You just can't afford to live without both partners working. So it's a real shame that we've lost some of that. And most of the time, both partners want to work, but here it is, as it is now, both partners have to work, and that's really kind of a shame.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that is that if you live on the countryside, a lot of the neighbors I have here with young families, you have one partner home usually still. And the kids go to a subsidized kindergarten in the village and a kindergarten was made bigger where they put the second group in the former sports zone of the club that now got a new sports zone. Because we're a tiny village and we have our own village government in a way.
Cool.
It's sort of a weird concept of municipality. We're not a town officially, but we have a mayor.
Right.
But
Awesome.
we have the village parliaments, and
right.
That way they figured out a solution that worked for everyone and made it possible for people to have their children in kindergarten, and that allowed the one partner that stays home to be a bit more flexible. But if you pay, I think, $100 or $200 for childcare a month, because it's subsidized, it's very different to, I think, $1,000 at least sometimes in the US.
Yes. Depending on where you're going, or more. I know that my mentor, Chef Sean, he was telling me, he has 3 children, and he was telling me that his entire check paid for daycare. So, I mean, that's weekly. His entire check weekly would pay for daycare.
Yep.
So, and I know he made more than I did. So,
and with the work times, with the work schedule you have here, it's a lot more family friendly usually. So you get off work earlier and you have more family life. And with my dad, who was a teacher, it really was that he had the afternoon in that sense off, which meant in his case he was more flexible. He had to do school prep and everything. But aside from that, he could be there.
So,
wow.
Okay.
They could figure out a solution.
Yeah, I hear you. So tell me, holidays. I mean, we're talking about celebrations, but holidays, what kind of, we're talking Christmas or what are the big holidays in Germany, actually?
It's, of course, Christmas, the whole Christian ones.
Right.
Because Germany used to be divided between Protestant and Catholic, but a lot of the holidays are the same. So depending on the state you're in, some may be an official holidays, some may not be, but the big ones always are. So you got Easter, Christmas,
right.
The one where Jesus came back.
That's Easter, yeah.
No, afterwards again.
Here we put it all in the same one.
We have the one afterwards too. So yeah, we have a lot of Christian holidays.
I'm not particularly active in church. Yeah, I'm not particularly active in church and religious stuff. So yeah, that's kind of we just do Easter. It's just it encompasses the whole thing. We don't worry about one or the other before or after. Now there's the Jewish race has Passover and that type of stuff. But anyway, what kind of meals do you have for celebrations like that? What kind of things are served?
Yeah, it's usually a roast for the meat eaters and potatoes.
Lots of potatoes.
You have seasonal veggies. Like with Easter, you oftentimes have something like broccoli and that whole category. While with Christmas, it's actually a little different. Sometimes with a lot of people have the Christmas Eve tradition, doing potato salad and sausages.
Okay.
That's sort of my grandma's best potato salad, by the way.
which Sophia graciously sent to me, and they haven't sent me. Apparently, they're having a hard time getting it. I ordered the German mustard, and it still hasn't arrived, so I'm waiting on it.
Yeah, and my grandma actually had a traditional training as a housekeeper and
Okay.
everything. With she was, and she took over the family farm in a way. I mean, it wasn't a
Mhm.
full working farm, but they had animals and vegetables
Mhm.
and some woodland. So she never was like a traditional housewife in that sense. She always had to take care of the farm too. And
Mhm.
but that's still used as a housewife. That's still called a housewife in Germany usually, although it's
Right.
her farm. So you had that, and she had this potato salad, and for Christmas she usually made some, I think, pork
Mhm.
roast and potatoes, and we we had some kind of veggies with a sauce on it,
Mhm.
and for for dessert she made something like pudding, like
Ah.
she liked
Huh.
doing that. Or she liked to make a curd cheese dessert
Mhm.
with yogurt in there and chocolate.
Wow. It sounds very interesting. So it wasn't super sweet. It was almost a um I want to say almost headed towards savory.
Yeah, it's sort of savory in a way with a little bit of sweetness, but nothing
Right.
too crazy because
Right.
we don't like it too sweet.
I hear you. Yeah, us in America tend to like our sweets, and we also tend to like our fried foods and convenience foods. And it's unfortunate we're losing a lot of traditional recipes because nobody does it anymore. So, and it's good to hear that they still do a lot of the traditional stuff in Germany. Now, you said you're in the lower flat area. You also spent some time in Westphalia. Is that the
Yeah,
more mountainous areas?
yeah, that's the mountain region.
Okay. So what kind of things do they have in that part? I mean, obviously we're talking about two different areas. And is Westphalia sort of toward Bavaria-esque, or because I hear
No,
Bavaria
they're
and
pretty similar to the northern German in a way.
mhm,
They like their eggs, they like their bacon, they like their blood sausage,
mhm.
and
Do they but they don't have as much farmland because they're in the mountains, so they're going to be more meat oriented.
they
Would
do
that
have farmland, but it's but the cows have to move more
mhm,
instead of just being able to graze. So
mhm.
it changes a little bit, but it's a huge farm area too. And they
Okay.
have potatoes and grow houses at this point too. So they have their
Mhm.
own paprika and so on. Oh, bell
Oh,
peppers.
wow, okay. Uh-huh. Right.
It's still a
So
little
they
irritating to me that the English term for the spice is paprika, but the
right.
term for the thing itself is bell peppers because we have the same term.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, well, paprika is peppers. They're just dried and ground. So I can see that. Usually they use a spicier one or a smokier one. They do a lot of stuff or sweet. Um, at least here. I'm assuming it's just different peppers. So they're not more they have the same Sunday roast and then they have vegetables throughout the week in the more mountainous areas, or are they
Yeah,
more
it's
prone to have a bit more meat?
not really that much more meat traditionally. I mean,
Mhm.
in today's time with meat more available, it's a
Mhm.
lot more meat, but it's also brought up a rise in a lot of illnesses that are related to the consummation of a lot of meat.
Cholesterol. Yeah, good
Yeah,
old cholesterol, our friend. So that leads to heart disease and stroke. So, that type of stuff. So yeah, I guess I can see that. So how are the two areas different in their basic cuisine? I mean, obviously, when you're talking about building a cuisine, it is dependent upon the things that you can get in your local area as it begins, and then that tradition just kind of continues. So how are the two areas different in, between the mountainous area and the lowlands?
Yeah, I mean, the availability of salt was very different because
Mm-hmm.
with the coastal region, you have salt a lot of cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
That that's also the reason people in that region have traditionally been taller, partially.
Okay.
They had more meat and they had more salt, so the thyroid was taken care of better.
Mm-hmm. So, if you're talking in the lowlands, did you have more fish and seafood versus up in the mountains?
That too. With the seafood, it's pretty available here and it's a
Right.
huge staple. Like we have fish rolls too, and
Mm-hmm.
seafood rolls that are a
Mm-hmm.
huge tradition, and it's pretty awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stopped eating fish after we moved away from here
Mm-hmm.
because it
Gotcha.
wasn't as fresh anymore. And as soon as it smells fishy, I'm out.
Well, I think that's most people. The fresher it smells. I mean, people don't understand that fish should smell of the sea. That it shouldn't smell like a fish. So,
Yeah.
so when you go to your
If
fish
I
market or
smell fish,
whatever,
I'm not eating that.
yeah, really and
It
truly,
should
you
smell
shouldn't because it's
salty.
old.
It should smell fresh.
Hmm. As of the sea, that's kind of how I put it. When you're standing on the shore of the beach and you take a big old whiff of air, that's what it should smell like in with your fish. So,
And yeah, you
just so
can
everybody knows.
freeze fish, but it's still not the same as having a fresh piece
Hmm.
that ideally you caught yourself and prepared yourself.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
definitely.
what also was different was the availability of the spices. Like with the trade being
Mhm.
closer, you had all of the great fun spices. You had
Right.
lemons and so on better. So
Mhm.
the fish cuisine was made finer, while the other ones got the fish they got out of their ponds, and you didn't necessarily have sage with them unless you were rich.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, Seems like a shame. I mean, the fish, I can see where the coast would have better fish and fresher fish. I mean, that makes sense to me. Same thing here. I mean, if they're having to ship it across, miles and miles of countryside in a train, in a frozen train or in one of those freezer truck, that you freeze it and you send it on,
Yeah,
and freezing it um makes it mushy, is kind of, soft and
yeah.
mushy, whereas fish should be
It's
firm.
it's rare that, oh, especially a white fish, remains
Mhm.
good in freezing. And
Mhm.
if you know how fish should look and smell, it's sort of off turning if it's not. And
Yeah.
I grew up liking seeing the fish head too,
Mhm.
because you could see the eyes.
Mhm.
And if the eyes are clear, it's a fresh fish.
Yes. If they're cloudy, it's not. Yeah, definitely. So
Although a
tell
lot
me
of
about.
people
Yeah,
are
go ahead.
kind of turned off by seeing an animal's head on the plate. So, but that's sort of a
Yeah.
thing in Germany too, that you're closer to the produce in a lot of ways. So you're not as turned off by seeing a fish's head on the plate, and children are, and that's one huge difference I noticed too. Children aren't given special kids food here. They
They eat
usually
what
have
the
a
adults do.
plate, an extra
Mhm.
smaller plate, and they get the full meal like the adults have. And they
Hmm.
get liver pate, they get blood sausage. I've even had
Mhm.
a thing when I did an internship at a kindergarten where this 5-year old that lived on a farm that butchered themselves totally casually told everyone how butchering works
Oh wow, that
because
went
you
over
grow
well.
up with it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's sort of the children aren't cuddled as much as how produce comes about, and that an animal has to die to end up on your plate.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes that some children become sensitive to that and they decide they're not going to eat any meat. And, you know, that's a, you know, that's a great choice. I never had, none of my kids die that way, and nor any of my family. We like our meats, but it's a great way to live for certain people if that's what they want to do. And, but, you know, they replace their protein with things like soybean curd, tofu, you know, the vegetable burgers with a lot of beans, which have a lot of protein. So you find things that have the protein that you need when you're doing a vegan or vegetarian diet. But yeah,
I don't
having
have a
somebody who,
problem with people going vegetarian, but I think that if you shield children from the reality of it, you're
right,
giving them a huge trauma whenever they discover that that cute little piglet is a nice schnitzel
yeah,
they've eaten all along. And
mm-hmm,
that's what I have an issue with. And I've actually had this vegetarian colleague that's from a farm, and they had to
mm-hmm,
help with butchering from the age of 5.
mm-hmm,
And she also said she thinks it's a great thing that children find out how the produce comes about, that they can make an informed decision.
yeah,
She
yeah,
decided not to eat meat, and she still respects that it's part of feeding families
right,
to produce meat. So
mm-hmm,
it's it's a part of the process, and I like
yeah,
vegetarian options too. I like making
me
peas.
too.
I like making lentils. I
Mm-hmm,
like all of that sort of stuff that's protein
right,
based and really good for you too.
mm-hmm.
Not that I don't
I
mind putting bacon in there, but
I'm with you there. I do put a lot of bacon in a lot of stuff. So tell me, what are your favorite traditional foods? What are your favorite things?
fried blood sausage.
Uh huh.
That's it's a funny thing because I wouldn't eat it raw, but as soon as it's fried and it essentially looks black and bad, I love
Uh
it.
huh. Yeah.
It's and there's this saying blood sausage is a matter of trust. You don't get blood
Yeah.
sausage from anywhere. You get it from a butcher you really, really trust. And
Yeah.
we actually drove blood sausage about 2 hours into a city we used to visit for sports games and for family visits for my great aunt and her husband, because we had this amazing butchery in our village and they love their
Mm-hmm.
blood sausage. So we take it to them and afterwards go to the football game. And yeah, it's
So,
really a thing with sausage. I don't like every sausage.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a texture matter, sometimes it's I don't want to know how that one's made and I don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
And there's this really big German thing. It's essentially a fusion food, but it's still a German thing called
Mm-hmm.
Currywurst. It's
Okay.
essentially a bratwurst that's grilled, barbecued, and you
Right.
put a sauce with a lot of curry on there.
Okay.
It's
So are most sausages grilled, or my husband, you know, we're working on doing a Munich, which you graciously gave me the recipe for the potato salad for. Like I said, we're waiting on the mustard, but we got some brats to go with it and some sauerkraut because I don't have the time to do sauerkraut from scratch. I will probably eventually do it, but right now I don't. Um, but he was curious, as you know, from, as I've told you, he was from the Munich area. Um, if the sausages were grilled or boiled or what. how to prepare
They're
those?
often grilled, some fry them, depending on
Okay.
what you have available. But
Mhm.
oftentimes it's cast iron skillet or grill.
Okay.
And
Oh, good.
it's partially to reduce the fat in it, because the sausage itself has a good amount of fat. You don't
Mhm.
need to put loads of lard in there.
Mhm. No, I don't imagine.
And with German
Just
food, it's got this reputation for being a little more calorie rich,
mhm.
but oftentimes, yeah, we like to use butter and lard, but we also like to go easy on the fat too. So we
Mhm.
eat a lot of salad with it, we move a lot, we drive bikes a lot, and so on.
Mhm.
So we do the movement too, and if you barbecue it, it's less fat.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. When we visit on the reservation for feast days, some families still use open fire to cook, and that has to be the best food I've ever had.
Oh
Nothing
yeah,
is better than food cooked on an open fire. It just really makes a
and you
huge
never
difference.
clean the grill.
Ugh, yeah, it's wonderful. Joe is something about bratwurst or brockwurst. I'm not quite sure.
It's a different kind of sausage. The Bockwurst is more like a Frankfurter, but thicker.
Okay. Okay.
And the Bratwurst is either finely minced or non-finely minced. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a different kind of sausage. It's also a thing. Germans have a lot of kinds of sausage.
Yes. I agree with that. They have a lot of different sausages, and I'm assuming. I mean, really and truly, if you think about it, if you're talking about especially in a rural area, one of the best ways to preserve food is to throw it in a casing and smoke it in
Yeah,
some ways, and so it stores, so it gives you that protein that you need for the day. I mean, because you're wanting something like you said in the morning, you're wanting something high carb, high protein to get you through the day, and
yeah.
so
And
doing a sausage makes
the
sense.
reason you have a lot of dried sausages too, because
Mhm,
it
mhm,
allows you to take them with you. You don't have to
mhm,
freeze them. You don't have to cool them. You can
right.
eat them during the day. You can eat them whenever you're
Mhm,
in need of protein,
mhm,
in need of carbs, whatever. And that's sort
mhm,
of a big tradition here too, making food, preserving food in a way that doesn't ruin the taste and
right,
doesn't put in a lot of chemicals. Like in
right.
the US, you have a lot of tin cans.
A lot
In
of
Germany,
preservatives.
yeah, in Germany, you oftentimes just have a salt water,
Mhm,
and you have potatoes in there, you have kale in there, which is another favorite food of mine,
mhm.
and you have all of these veggies in there. You have beans, kale, sometimes even
So
tomatoes.
it's you can it like you would,
Yeah,
instead of
you can
using
it
preservatives.
in glass
Uh-huh.
rather
Okay.
than put in a lot of chemicals to preserve it.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
just use salt and
Salt.
water.
Wow. That sounds so fresh and so good. Because
Yeah, and
we
it's
do
also
have a
how
lot.
we get a lot of the tomatoes here, because
Mhm.
you they make the sauce in Italy. They fill it into bottles,
Right.
and we get the ripe, sun-ripe tomatoes from Italy, Spain,
Mhm.
and so on. And it's usually even better than the fresh tomatoes you get at the supermarket,
Yeah.
because they're a little more artificial and have less flavor. So
Right.
you get the good potatoes, you get the good
Mhm.
potatoes, you get the good tomatoes from everywhere. So
Mhm.
you have a good variety, and you can go to the supermarket and get in the canned goods aisle, and you get all of the stuff, and you you have it in the pantry. You don't need to freeze
Mhm.
it. You don't need to cool it.
Right.
And
Right.
you can use it whenever.
Mhm. So Joe asks a question. I don't know. I can't speak the
I
language,
don't have
so
a channel yet, and I don't. And
yeah.
if
Okay.
this goes the way it usually goes, I'm probably gonna have one at some point, and refuse to until I do it anyway.
Well, I tell you what, you ought to do a cooking channel and join the SPTV cooking channels. There's two of us,
Yeah,
two of the cooking channels.
my problem with cooking is I pretty much need someone
Re-
that's always there to make a video because I spontaneously cook whatever I'm in the mood for. And it's sort of like, oh, yeah, I'm just gonna open the tea thing of sage and throw it in there however I like it. And oops, I think I got a little too much orange zest for the tea I made. Let's just put it in the soup.
That's awesome. So you put tea in the soup.
Chaotic
That's
of
what.
of a cook to do that, to be honest.
You know, I am sort of I call them eyeball cooks. I eyeball everything, and so to do the videos, I've actually had to stop myself from doing that because and actually stop and measure. And so a lot of times, what happens is it because I have to write the recipe for what I'm doing. And so what happens is I've eyeballed it, and then I'm like going, okay, so I put about that much. Okay, that's instead of saying that looks like a teaspoon, I have to go, all right, measure, you know,
Yeah,
so that I
my
have the amount.
mom pretty much started to quantify the measuring by heart thing for my grandma and I because we're totally the same there. We have pretty much the same pancake recipe
Mm-hmm.
because it's sort of, oh, that amount of flour will do it, that amount of milk, that amount of butter, fine, let's do that. And my mom
Yeah.
always tried to kind of figure out a quantity for it because
Mm-hmm.
we're very intuitive, and my grandma developed a caramel candy recipe with her sister during the war with
Oh,
rolled oats and so on. And it's pretty much like, oh, you wait until the caramel is about that thick, then you put
right.
in the milk,
Right.
and
Uh-huh.
the the candy recipe is actually the base for a lot of other recipes in some way because the size of the candies sort of has been the family measurements for all sorts of other things by now.
Yeah. Family recipes are amazing, and they change and develop. You start out, a lot of things like my grandmother have got a lot of her recipes, and it's really funny to see, the difference in what I do now versus what she did, and how that develops.
Yeah,
So
my one
I can.
cousin also got into the recipes, but she's got a lot more food allergies than I do, so she adapted the recipes to,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think, wait a minute, she's sugar free and milk free. So
Okay.
she actually made a milk and sugar free cake that's delicious.
It can be done. Yes, it can be done.
Yeah, she took
Does she?
dates and I think something as a base, and then made
That sounds good.
a fruit thing. And
Uh huh.
I'm not really the biggest. I like certain cakes, but not every cake.
Hmm.
And my favorite cake is a butter cake, so I don't really do low calories. Let's be real. I love my
Yeah, my
salads.
son.
I love my Mediterranean kitchen, but I love my calories.
Yeah, yeah. My
And
son's birthday is this weekend, and I was saying, "Oh God, that means I have to make a cake." And I was thinking what I was going to make, and then I realized, oh, he really liked that chocolate cobbler, so I'm going to make, and it's easy, so I'm going to make chocolate cobbler for him for his birthday. But
yeah,
you know,
I haven't made Königsberger Klopse yet. I gotta be honest about that. but I think there's some kind of potato knödel with breading in there.
Gnocchi? Gnocchi?
No, not gnocchi. Not gnocchi. The bigger ones.
Oh, the pierogies.
Yeah, it's a German thing with we have sort of a lot of kinds of knödel. So, yeah, my favorite one still is the long one, technically, because it's not a German one. It's kind of Czech, from the Czech Republic, actually.
Got
and
you,
from
okay.
Austria, but that's pretty much the same cuisine-wise at some point. So you have, well, with Austria, you had the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Right.
So you had a lot of these Hungarian influences in there. You've had Czech influences then, where and a lot of the recipes sort of were adapted a little bit by the regions, but pretty much the same. And it's sort of a huge potato ball, and
Right.
it's steamed, and you can cut it in
Okay.
slices, and put some sauce on there. That's really good. So you have a lot of those recipes, and my favorite cake is a butter cake, aside from cheesecake, and it's a yeast dough with butter and sugar in there, and a lot of cream. Yeah, it's a German recipe. What can I say? And
so
then you let it rise to the point where it becomes a nice dough.
Like a bread. Almost like a bread.
And then you put a topping of almonds and sugar and butter in there that is mixed, and you make little holes in the dough. Like you go in there with your fingers.
Right.
So the butter seeps through, and it makes really amazing and not too creamy,
not too sweet,
airy cake. It's sort of a solid cheesecake in a way, as like baking cheese. So that's my favorite cake still. Although I'm not counting out a good cheesecake either.
No one would. So tell me, in the area, obviously Germany has a lot of other cultures and a lot of other countries around it. Europe tends to be that way. What are the influences, or what kind of influences have been brought in and sort of welcomed by the German people into their cuisine? I mean, you're talking like India might bring curry.
You got the different waves. You got a lot of Polish recipes. So you had a lot of Polish people come in for coal mining. And they brought a lot of the recipes in there, and they stayed. So that changed the kitchen a little and was welcomed. And then you had the visiting workers when Germany was booming after World War II, thanks to a lot of investments from the US. And they stayed too. And they were, a lot of them were from Greece, Spain, a few, I think, Italy a lot, and Turkey. So you have a German version of the kebab now that is very much embraced. You have a lot of Italian recipes that are very much embraced, and Greek recipes too. So that's one thing I miss about living in a big town. You have all of those original restaurants around, and you can just go to the restaurant and get yourself some kebab, some feta cheese, some pizza. And I mean, original one. I kind of have to make my own by now here, because we have a good pizza restaurant, but it's seasonally closed. So But I found out if you take a pizza flour and
Right.
enough olive oil,
Right.
the pizza dough comes together pretty well anyway.
Yeah.
And
Pizza
it's
dough is
just
really
like a
not that hard.
big canister,
Yeah.
big one of a big thing of olive oil. They had
Yeah.
one. They had one at Lidl in the office section, and it's like 3 liters of olive oil.
Okay. In the automotive section?
Nee, in the office section. Like you have weekly office. And with German discounters, you have like country weeks sometimes. Like you got Greek stuff, you got Italian stuff, you got Turkish stuff, you got an Austrian week. So you occasionally have like huge bottles of olive oil there that you can buy in bulk, which always comes off better. That's sort of a German food. We like to buy preservable food in bulks.
Yeah, I buy it pretty much in bulk as well. So Joe has a comment for you. I'm not gonna be able to say those names, so if you want to read it.
It's Königsberger Klöpse. It's sort of a. I know theoretically what they are, but I haven't eaten them that often, and I haven't made them so far. So I can look to some of the recipes and figure out what makes most sense, because with Königsberg it's Poland now, but it's the old Eastern German cuisine, and a lot of the Germans that lived in that regions fled after World War II. So the recipes of that region came together all over Germany. So because they ended up all over Germany, one of the children that fled after that because they were chased off because they were German. And some of them were on the side of the Nazis, some weren't, so it's a little bit of a mess. And one of the ones that had to flee actually became our president. So they're pretty entrenched in the German history. Yeah.
Okay, well,
German food, there's a lot of regional influences. People brought in their recipes because they had to flee. That's part of how we got French cuisine too, because you had the Huguenots, I think they're called in English.
Huguenots? Yeah, I think so. I think I know what group you're talking about.
And they had to get out of France for some reason. And they ended up in the parts of Germany where they were welcome religiously. So a lot of the French recipes ended up in there too.
Yeah, sort of a melting pot.
Yep.
So Joe says something about having a funny story from Mainz. Did I say that right?
Fennel tea with cream.
Oh, wow.
Fennel tea with cream. Fennel is one of those foods you can chase with. I hate it. I hate the smell of it. I hate the texture. I hate the whole thing.
So you care for the anise flavor, the licorice type flavor that it has? Because
with anise, it's all right. Not the biggest fan, but with fennel, it's sort of a family despising thing because my dad hates it too. Part of it is because fennel tea is used as a natural remedy in Germany, so children are fed fennel tea when they're sick, and that leaves the sting.
For colds and stuff like that?
Yeah, for colds and stuff. With Germany, you have a lot of herbal medicine too, because you don't always need heavy meds on if you can just sweat it out.
Right.
And
Right.
some teas actually help really well sweating out better, and some teas
Mhm.
have some teas have healing qualities. And with
Right.
the
Like
pagan
gingers and stuff.
and
Ginger
Celtic
tea.
culture surviving here too, a lot of
Mhm.
the traditional herbal medicine survived here.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
people still knew what those herbs did. And that's how you got a lot of healing herbs too. So
Right.
that is
I know that last time I had a cold, yeah, I tend to get a chest cold when I get one. And so I drank they had a herbal tea called Breathe Easy, and it was very fennel anise flavored. Um, that was a big thing I noticed about it was the fennel.
yeah, you can. I never got why people like to eat it. I mean,
I
I
love it.
like eating blood sausage, so let's respect
Exactly.
people's
Yeah. I mean,
oddities. But
yeah,
you,
it's like, having heard, now I don't know for sure exactly what blood sausage is. I'm assuming I've read about it a little bit, and it just kind of, to
it's
me, is
pretty
like, I
much.
don't know.
My grandma used to make it herself, so it's
Hmm.
pretty much you take the animal blood and you cleanse it in a way.
Hmm.
Then you cook it, and you get a sausage like you make every other kind of the meat a sausage.
Hmm.
Just you just have to be more careful with the blood because it can get
Right.
bad, pretty bad, and yeah, you don't want
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Joe agrees with you. Yes, Huguenots is right. Many of them came to England. So,
Yeah, they came there too, and with Europe, a lot of the European history is very divided by formally religion.
hmm,
So if you had the wrong religion in the wrong region, you kind of had to flee to
right.
a region that accepted it.
Hmm.
And usually there wasn't one very far, especially if you lived near Germany, because the funny thing in Germany is you had the Westphalian Peace Treaty. So you had
Hmm.
this principle of cuius regio, eius religio. So whoever was the king or the whatever name for king there is
The
in that
leader.
version, there were a lot of them,
Uh-huh.
determined
The
the religion.
emperors or
So
czars, I guess, was.
yeah, Joe, it's the black pudding one. The blood sausage, the fried one. It's black pudding
Oh,
essentially.
for Halloween, we have the English version called black pudding. Okay.
Yeah, and with the different religions, you had for
Hmm.
the for the land kings.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
had like you could like go to Hesche if you were persecuted for being Protestant. You could go to Bavaria if you were persecuted for being Catholic. So a lot of the food traditions moved around well enough. So and it actually was still a big conflict in Germany for a long time with the different religions. So
Hmm.
my grandparents' marriage was kind of controversial because my grandma was Catholic and my grandfather was Protestant,
Hmm.
and it caused a little bit of ruckus in his family because they were very proudly, I think, Lutheran.
Hmm.
So they were really, really Protestant.
Oh,
And
wow.
he also chose to convert to Catholicism
Hmm.
on his own, but that didn't go over well.
I don't imagine. My grandfather was Scot. My grandfather's a Scotsman and Scots Irish, and he was Protestant Irish or Orange Irish. And my first husband was a Catholic, and my
Oh,
grandfather refused to come to the wedding because, yeah, I can remember as a kid I wasn't allowed to wear green on St. Patrick's Day.
yeah,
Uh,
there's this
yeah.
song in the Irish folk culture called The Orange and the Green. It's really funny
Mhm.
about the differences if both families and religions are involved, where everyone kind of tries to sneak the religion past the other one. And the kids caught
Well,
in the
yeah.
middle.
Yeah, I would walk to
The
school.
Irish flag actually honors the Protestants.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah, I
orange
would walk.
of the
Go
Irish
ahead.
flag actually honors the Orange men that fought for Irish independence.
Ah, okay, that's cool. Well, yeah, my grandfather was Orange Irish, and so on the way to school, I would take a safety pin with me, and on the way to school, I would pick a leaf off of a bush and pin it to my shirt on St. Patrick's Day, so that I didn't get pinched.
Yeah,
You know, because my family was that way. So really, kind of interesting cultural and religious things that go on in these families and in these countries. Very, very interesting.
It didn't entirely break down the relationship, but it soured it a little. And when my mother and her sisters came around, it got a little better, but there was always a little bit of a distance because of
because of that.
My grandfather chose a different path.
Yeah. So Joe says she wants to give me the recipe for the blood sausage for a Halloween video idea. Joe, you're welcome to do that. I might make it if I can get enough blood and figure it out, and then I'll feed it to the dogs.
Ask a butcher. They usually have a lot of clean blood they're not going to use. Especially if you're around German butchers. The blood sausage is more of a thing there.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to go to Fredericksburg or New Braunfels to do that because not a whole lot, not a big German presence here in Austin that I know of. So, but neither one of those are very far, so no biggie. But yeah, Joe, if you want to send it to me, I won't guarantee I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do a couple of cookie and that type of stuff ideas that I have, you know, for some Halloween stuff. I'm starting to work on it. The big issue that's happening now is I'm gearing up to start the Thanksgiving stuff. So we'll be doing basically Thanksgiving dinner probably right around the end of October this year. And then I have to do it again. And then, of course, Christmas dinner, what we do for Christmas dinner, I'll be doing around Thanksgiving, which means I'm going to have to do 2 of them because my husband will refuse. I mean, he will divorce me if I don't make a prime rib for Christmas Day. So, because I do a prime rib roast every Christmas.
Traditional thing usually is goose,
goose, yeah.
Yeah, you make a goose roast, which I never really got into because I don't like
really fatty
meat.
Yeah, it's a really, really fatty meat. They've got a lot of fat in there. And duck and goose, dude, it's like right under the skin, you know, and so you have to render that. And the other thing is especially if they're like wild, if they're not, you know, raised or farm raised, if you get like a wild goose, you're talking about, they tend to be a bit more stringy because they work those muscles instead of just walking around and eating, you know. So you know, I can see where goose, I have not done a goose. We do turkey, and like I said, I do a prime rib, and then I do a black-eyed peas with cabbage and ham hock for New Year's, for the first of the year.
We usually go with a nicer meat than we usually do, like a beef something, and oftentimes it's like something like rolls, or if you roll up meat with some pickles and bacon and so on and there, and or we do a like beef roast.
Right.
Okay, one Christmas we actually did a pig roast, and took pesto on it.
Oh yeah. Was it
And
a basil pesto or was it, because there's all
uh,
different kinds of pestos?
basil pesto, but
Okay.
I got it from the shop that's really that's run by the
Mhm.
club that's part of
Mhm.
the church my first church,
Right.
somewhat related to it. They
Mhm.
started a social eco farm in 1998. So, and it's grown and grown, and they have a shop on the main street now, and they have like really amazing pestos,
Mhm.
also pepper free. So I like that.
Mhm. Right.
Bye, Joe.
Bye, Joe. But
And
go ahead.
we took that one,
Mhm.
and I also found out they have mushroom ones now, so they have a nice
Yeah.
variety.
Yeah.
So
I love mushrooms.
yeah, there's a mushroom pesto that
Mm.
that I got from there, and I still have to use it in some way.
Huh.
Maybe
We'll
with
have to
the
we'll have to we'll have to talk about that because I'm sure there's lots of things we could do with that, you
yeah,
know.
and we put it on the roast, and we
Mhm.
put it in I don't know how you call it in English, the croissant like dough.
It's like a roll?
It's a bit like beef Wellington.
Yeah.
The dough
Yeah.
you put around beef
Mhm.
Wellington,
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we made that, and I think we made caramelized potatoes, which is a specialty of my dad's.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that one because that sounds amazing. You told me about those a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like going, Yes,
Yeah,
please." But the
I
bad
kind
part
of
about it is
switched.
I'm
I kind of switched the preparation method. My dad
Mhm.
used butter and not processed sugar, but brown sugar, the raw one.
Right.
And I kind of went with honey instead to caramelize.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah,
get it from
I
the local farm shop I like to frequent a lot.
Yeah,
So
you're gonna have to share that recipe with me for that one. I think you have sent it to me, but unfortunately, I just started my low carb for the next little bit here, all the way up until we get into Christmas. Because at Christmas time, I just back off a little bit. But and potatoes are definitely not on that diet plan.
and we went with I think red cabbage. And
Hmm.
what we do with red cabbage is we, especially around Christmas, is we put cinnamon, cardamom, and turmeric in
Hmm.
there.
Oh, that's a
It makes
nice
it
and
nice
healthy
and
set.
yeah, it makes it nice and seasonally, and
Hmm.
that's how we like to do it. We like
Hmm.
to use turmeric anyway, so I actually
Right.
put some in the chicken soup.
Turmeric's a great anti-inflammatory.
Yeah,
Um, really, really good. It's like I use a lot of ginger. My son has a gastrointestinal issue, where he's got a lot of acid reflux. It's basically GERD, only he has it really badly. And when he starts to feeling really bad, then I will make him a chicken soup but I use ginger in it, just to settle his stomach. So
yeah,
yeah.
we use turmeric for it because I don't really like ginger that much,
Hmm.
unless it's in curry. But
Hmm.
if we make my own spicy version of it,
Hmm.
because one amazing thing I found out in Germany is that there's a sweet curry variant. So
Ah, okay.
you can cut out the pepper in it and replace it with more chili.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
always down for more chili.
Yeah, it's really between him and I also have a little bit of gastro issues, but between he and I can't. I love spice. I love a nice hot, heat. I don't like it so hot that you can't taste anything afterwards. I like to taste the
Yeah,
peppers.
that's sort of the limit for me too. I want to be able to
Yeah,
taste the food.
yeah. What's the point if you're going to burn your taste buds off? But the problem is my stomach will not let me have that. So I have to, everything that I'm doing on the channel, I will say add this pepper or jalapenos or ghost peppers or whatever if you want spice. Although when I show it, you see that I never add it because I can't.
Yeah, we do
So,
it differently depending on if my mom's there, because my
mhm.
mom doesn't handle spice too well either.
Right, right.
It's it's a it's a service to all of us to avoid it, to put
Yes.
it nicely.
Same
So
here. Same here. I
we have
mean,
a
with Jack, it's a trip to the ER. We don't want to do that on a
yeah,
weekday.
and we actually made a spice hot free version of the ketchup spice for my mom,
Hmm.
and I figured out how to make a onion free barbecue sauce through my mom, because
Yeah.
if she replaces onions with green peppers,
Neat idea. Good job, Mom.
and she cuts them up finely
Uh
and
huh.
prepares them like onions, and
Hmm.
that
So she
way,
thought. So she sears them, basically.
yeah, she sees them like onions, and nobody
Hmm.
notices the difference, and it's onion free,
Sounds
which
really good.
is good for her. I don't
Sounds good. I'll
mind.
have to send that to my sister-in-law because she has an onion allergy.
And we tested it and made barbecue sauce with it, and
She'd make a good one. Make a really good barbecue sauce, actually.
yeah, and that worked well, and
Hmm.
it kind of works well for me too, because I don't like the consistency of onions. If I
Right.
can't taste them anymore, it's fine. And
Hmm.
that's how we do it with the kale stew too, because
Right.
I don't like biting into onions.
Yeah.
So we kind of mince up the onions really finely
Hmm.
and blend them. And
You can always grate them. Take a microplane and grate the onions, and they just come
only
apart.
like you do for a garlic
Hmm.
cutlet.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
an idea too. And with the kale stew, that's sort of a family favorite. You
Right.
need onions, and I
Hmm.
always accepted onions as part of the deal. I just didn't want to bite on them. So
Right.
either my dad made them big enough that you can recognize them, or he made them fine enough that you don't
Right.
recognize them.
Right.
And you sear the onions with bacon.
Hmm.
You dump a whole lot of kale on there and put
Yep.
some stew in there,
Hmm.
and then you put the sausages in there and let it stew for at least 2 hours. And when on the third day when you eat it, it's almost the best, because everything is so cooked through, and oh my gosh.
Blended and married. I call it
Yeah.
marrying of the seasoning.
And
Um,
we
you
do
know.
the kale recipe a little different, because it's usually done with pepper and salt.
Right. Right. Hmm.
But since I don't do pepper, we put a little bit of chili in there, which I handle really well. So it totally replaced pepper
The
for
pepper.
me, which
Hmm.
isn't which is probably a recipe version that a lot of people will crucify me for in this region, but I don't care. It works for me.
If you like it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like here in Texas. It's really kind of funny. There's this big fight about whether or not there's beans in chili. Now, every once in a while, somebody will talk about how they made chili and they put beans in it, and I'm like, just because I find it funny, there's no beans in chili. What are you talking about? Because in Texas they don't put beans in chili, but there's people who are coming in from other areas, and they make chili, and they have, a lot of the in Texas, they'll have like a block party with them. Somebody makes a big pot of chili, and they would do hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff like that. And though somebody will bring over one that's got beans in it, and then the argument ensues. You don't put beans in chili. Well, you have to have beans in chili, and back and forth. And it's like, my thought on that is, if you like it,
eat it. If you don't.
Exactly.
And I mean, the thing I think about it is, listen, I get that certain recipes aren't to be messed with. Don't ruin a schnitzel. I'm pretty religious about that one. It's a specific one, but I also make the breading different than traditionalists would, because I like to put a little spice in there. I finally found out I can handle the certain kind of spice, so I'm gonna use that information.
Yeah, exactly.
And why would I do it to myself to use a pepper I can't handle, rather than using one I can?
Right.
Nobody has to eat my kale stew if they don't like the chili.
But
essentially,
it's like,
but I don't want plain kale stew either, just because I can't do pepper.
Right, I hear you. Peace and Love says chili for hot dogs and hamburgers shouldn't have beans. Chili, my opinion only, because I have to live with the fact that I live with a Yankee, and he wants beans in his chili. So, yeah, I have to deal with beans in the chili. So, and I do. It doesn't bother me. But yes, hot dog and hamburger chili shouldn't have beans, but neither should the rest of it. But that's my opinion, and everybody has one. So if you like beans in your chili, cool.
I mean,
and I'll eat chili with beans.
Is if people intentionally eat food that is gonna lay in their stomach for eternity. That's what I don't get. Just use some cumin. I know it's not the traditional way, but why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, I love kales, I love cabbages, but if you eat them and you don't do it, and you don't do anything in there that helps move it along, you're a bit masochistic, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of cumin either. I don't like to bite on it particularly, but
you can use ground.
Yeah,
just use ground cumin.
If it helps for
move
me
things
to
along,
get the cabbage out faster and better, and I don't have to stop eating for half the day because of it, I'm gonna do it.
I hear you. So Michelle wants to know, how do you make vegetarian chili without beans? Well, here's the thing. I'm sorry, Michelle, I don't make vegetarian chili. I wouldn't, definitely you need beans and probably some lentils in a vegetarian chili. Just something to give it that.
I have an idea for that.
Or that feeling. Alrighty, shoot.
If you cut up pumpkin and season it well, and prepare it like you would prepare a goulash, like cut it up, roast it, you pretty much get the feeling of meat.
Okay.
And it's a similar structure.
Huh.
I mean, I accidentally discovered how close to meat pumpkin is when I took the rest of the pumpkin we cut up that didn't fit in the oven for the spice I make, and fried it. I mean, I ate it with a steak, but that's a different story. But it's really...
Yeah.
But if you roast it well, it's pretty much like meat.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why you would put the beans in a vegetarian chili for the protein value. Definitely. So I can see that. I just don't. not being vegetarian, and it's really interesting because I still fight with which one is totally, no animal products at all versus the one that, oh, well, we'll use butter and we'll use milk, type thing.
With the vegetarian is you don't eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have a version where they don't eat fish either because they're also
animals.
Yeah. And the vegan one is where you don't eat any meat products. Like, you don't even eat butter, eggs.
Right. Okay.
But you can make
I never. Yeah, I've always wondered about
that. There's a huge vegan market by now, which I'm not unhappy about as a lactose intolerant person, because you get all of these vegan alternatives, and you have like vegan eggs, and you can actually make vegan eggs for baking with what was it again? Lupin flour. Like,
I've seen that.
There's a little remark on the lupin flour how you can replace eggs for baking, because you just need the consistency for it. So
yeah,
but I'm not unhappy about the vegan thing.
Yeah, I don't think I could give that stuff up. I'm pretty carnivore.
I like meat, but I like knowing what I can replace lactose with. So I like that everyone can eat. And I like that I know if I have someone vegan in there and I'm the host,
have something
how I can make it. Because if I'm hosting, I don't want people to not like their food.
Right. Agreed.
Just because there's something.
I don't want people to feel like they have to.
I don't like mushrooms.
Right.
I'm gonna figure something else out because it's a host thing.
Well, it's like if you don't like mushrooms, and the idea is to make stuffed mushrooms. Let's say stuffed mushrooms. Well, instead of using mushrooms, you can always use those little peppers. They're sweet. They're little sweet. They're about this big around. They look like jalapenos, only they're called sweet peppers. And you can put the stuffing in that you would put in a mushroom in that sweet pepper and bake it the same way, do exactly the same thing, and you have something that you would enjoy because you don't like mushrooms.
I mean, it's what I did with a lot of the Christmas dinners that weren't as traditional in our house. If I didn't like lamb meat because we had little lambs and we had an Easter lamb, and I just couldn't eat consciously. I know it's weird because I don't mind eating every other kind of meat, but I just couldn't eat it.
There was the block. Yeah. You knew that animal, therefore, exactly.
And even my grandfather couldn't eat his own sheep. He always arranged that he got other sheep because he had that block too. So whenever we did lamb meat, I would get myself a different kind of meat and prepare differently. Or if we did something with pineapple, and my brother despises pineapple, so I figured out a version without pineapple for him. So
pineapple, right. Well, we're getting to the 2-hour mark, so we probably ought to wrap this up. I found exactly what we were talking about, very educational. Sure enjoyed having you with me. We'll have to do this again. And, come visit when we do the regular ones, and you pop on. I'll send you a link for the.
Pretty much. I like the easy, simple recipes, the sauteed veggies. I like a glazed, honey glazed carrot very well. If it's still, you can still bite it. So I love my meats, but I also love a good veggie.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't like to overcook it.
No, you don't need to overthink it. Sometimes the stuff that are easy and you just walk in and say, well, this sounds good, and throw it in a pot is some of the best.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good schnitzel and everything, but I like the comfort food. I like eating potatoes, eggs, bacon.
Right.
It's
Right.
homely. I like a good pancake. I like all of this. It's
Yeah. And those are the easy things. So,
and I
a
like the
lot of times.
potatoes too because
Mhm.
it always reminds me of grandma. And
Yeah.
whenever grandma did potatoes, she'd make a lot more. And because she knew I'd like my farmer's breakfast in the evening,
Mhm.
so she'd
Mhm.
make those perfect potatoes with the little bit of sugar in the cooking water. And
Mhm. You told
I'd
me
get
about
them
that.
in these old margarine pots she had,
Mhm.
and I can cut them up later and make them into a farmer's breakfast. And I love that.
Sounds
I love the
awesome.
family of it. I love the tradition of it. I like remembering the
And that's what it's
soil
all about, though.
my
That's what
family
cooking
built
is all about.
their thing on, even if
Mhm.
it's not there anymore for us. But I
Mhm.
like that in memory.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's what cooking is all about, and sharing the recipes with everybody, within your family and outside, you know? It's like the reason that Sinfully Good, the channel, is there is, I look at I'm not gonna do anything that's super duper complicated. I might do something that's a little harder, um, sort of in the medium range, but I'm not going to do something that, is this huge, really involved in all these techniques thing, because the whole reason for that channel is people coming out of cults, out of the Sea Org.
Or
Some
out
of
of
those people,
situations where they didn't have time to
yeah,
cook.
exactly. Some of those that people have never seen the inside of a kitchen, don't know what to do. So what do they do? They go and they get processed food out of the freezer case that's already made, and you just throw it in the microwave, or they go out to eat and they spend a lot more money doing that than if they cooked at home. So what I'm trying to do is keep I call it the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, but saying me, but keep it simple so that people who don't know how to cook, who've never really figured out or been able to learn to cook, have some place to go to see simple recipes that are good and filling, and will move them into maybe trying a few more challenging recipes at a later date. That's the whole idea of Sinfully Good.
Yeah,
So, uh,
it's like when I made a creme brulee for my mom because she
yeah.
loves creme brulee, and it was easy enough for me, but
Mhm.
I had to figure it out too, how to stock it, how to fill the thing and everything, and
Well,
how to.
the tempering of the eggs is the big part of a creme brulee because you're making a custard, and putting that hot milk in, basically scrambled eggs. You have to do it a certain way, and if you do it, I mean, just a little wrong, the whole thing is gone.
Yeah, I
So
found
that.
this French recipe that worked really well, and
Mhm.
I did it because my mom loves it,
Right.
and that's why I did it. And
Mhm.
not because, and otherwise I would have done a pudding
Mhm. Yeah.
or something else. But since
Mhm.
my mom's a huge caramel fan, let's be real.
Right.
So I like to
You need
do
to
stuff that
I need to
she
get you a
loves.
recipe for flan. If she likes caramel, she'll love flan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I always wanted to find a recipe for that, and I think I found
Mhm.
somewhere, but I haven't
Mhm.
tried it yet.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
my dad always got these cooking magazines, these recipe magazines, these seasonal ones, and he always got them. And
Mhm.
funny enough, they were called My Family and I, and pretty much marketed towards housewives. And he always got them, and it
Mhm.
was like a whole operation. He had the shopping list for Christmas dinner ready 2 months ahead. So it was his
Yeah.
religion. And
well, you know.
that's how you get a lot of the recipes. You figure out what works for you, how you take the sweetness out of it sometimes, because I found a ketchup recipe, but it was disgustingly sweet for me. So I just upped the soy sauce and took out
some of the sugar down. Yeah.
Took out the sweetness, went with a spoon of honey instead of, and they had this, the syrup they like to use in the US, maple syrup or something.
The high fructose corn syrup.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they had that in there, so I cut that out fast.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Michelle says thanks, you guys. Now she's starting at time for lunch. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up.
Yep.
I sure did enjoy having you on. I'm gonna throw up a couple of banners here. If you had a channel, I would have one for you as well. But please like and subscribe to Sinfully Good at Simple Good. I also this channel.
You can talk me into it. Because I'm way too much of a chaotic cook for it. I'll be honest, I have good recipes, but it's pretty much, I got this, and this around. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the ways to do that, and that would actually be a really good way to do it. It's like, okay, open your pantry door. What's in my pantry? We got this, and this. Let's throw it together. And then basically what you do is you video throwing it together, and then you have to go back and look at, okay, what did I actually make? Or just leave it at that. We'll throw together. You've seen the videos where they don't even give a recipe, that would kind of be a little bit of fun. Anyway, Sinfully Good has a sister channel. It's called Sinfully Low Carb. That is the handle for it, for low carb recipes. The recipe I just put in there is a low carb lasagna with some whey protein, quote unquote noodles. It makes a great pizza crust for those who want a pizza crust. And the last one I'm going to throw up, just because I'm not monetized yet, we're getting close on Sinfully Good, is if you would like to buy me a Southern Sweet Iced Tea, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee account. And there it is. Any parting words, Sophia?
Have a good lunch, Michelle, I guess.
Exactly.
And mushrooms really are good for vegan stuff. So it's got pretty much the consistency of meat anyway, if you love them. And I love mushrooms.
Of course. Well, thank you for joining us for this, Sophia. It was very educational. I truly enjoyed it. We'll do again on Fridays, y'all. Food Talks Fridays. I try to do them every week. So we will see you on Food Talk Friday next week. Thank you for coming, Sophia.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Y'all have a blessed evening.
Yep. And have a good time, guys.